So next up, we have Susan Ellinger, an industry analyst at Altimeter Group. And I will let her introduce her panel, but what I love about this one is we're going to be talking about big data and the Internet of Things. So what I love about big data, you can actually do much more with big data than just analyze it. You can actually find meaning within that data to come up with better stories. And as women, we're amazing storytellers. So there's some great stuff that's going to happen on this panel. Come on up, Susan Ellinger.
Happy morning. We have an amazing panel here today. We're going to start off with a little bit of a video to set the tone. Thank you so much to Cisco for the video. And ladies, why don't you come and have a seat, and I'll introduce you briefly. Then we'll go to video, and then we'll go to some Q&A. Then we're going to go to some Q&A among us. And then at about 9:15, we're going to switch over, and we're going to do some audience Q&A because we know you all are going to have a lot of questions for the amazing women here today. So I'm Susan Ellinger. I'm an industry analyst at Altimeter Group. We're based in San Mateo. My focus is actually on big data and analytics, and so Internet of Things is very, very close and dear to my heart. To my right here is Gerri Martin-Flickinger, who's the CIO of Adobe. And then next we have Tao Ye, who's a senior scientist at Pandora. And then we have Karen Walker, who is senior vice president of marketing at Cisco, and who we have to thank for the video. And then to the far left, actually, is Chris Rinney, from senior vice president of AT&T Services. So with that, I'd like to say let's roll video, and then we will have a little chat. I'm going to start by just teeing this up a little bit. And to start, I want to actually talk about I Love Lucy. And I'll tell you why I think I Love Lucy is relevant. So back in 1951, television was still really new. And Desi Arnaz and Lucille Ball wanted to create a show called I Love Lucy, and they actually wanted to shoot it where they lived in New York. And part of the innovation that Desi Arnaz came up with was that he wanted actually to use more than one camera, because television in the very early days was really kind of just a filmed version of radio. They would stick a camera up on up in the back. They would point it toward the stage, and then the people would do their thing as if they were in a radio play. And his idea was that if you put a second and then even a third camera in the room, in the studio, that you would be able to get much more human interaction, and you would be able to have the sort of classic, what we think of now as the classic Lucy reaction shot, you know, where he would say something and she would go, ooh, or she would say something and he would go into a tirade of Cuban Spanish. And, you know, when you think about it, it's kind of a very simple innovation, but it made so many things possible. It made television more cinematic. It allowed people, creators coming into television to start to develop much richer storylines, which made other things possible. And then if we fast forward to cable, cable made time shifting possible. And we fast forward to the internet, and the internet makes web TV possible. And all of a sudden we have people watching TV only on the web, which Nielsen can't detect. And so all of a sudden there's a disparity between the data that some people have and the data that other people are generating. And then in 1995, to just, you know, since we're all friends here, I was working at Charles Schwab, and that was the very beginning of the internet. And what we did on the internet was we put brochures up there, because that's what you did at the very beginning. It was sort of like that one camera in the television studio. You put the brochures on the internet, and then people can read them on their computer. Great innovation, right? And so here we are almost 20 years later, and we have devices talking to each other. I read a story actually in NPR the other day, thanks to Facebook, sticking it in my feed with an algorithm that figured out that I might find it interesting, about an iPhone app that can help bipolar people understand when they're starting to have a manic episode. Why? Because it understands and can detect speech patterns. My dad is 85 years old, and he lives 140 miles away from me, 8 miles from the nearest store. He's from Brooklyn, but in his old age, he's decided he wants to be a gentleman farmer. And he's 85 years old, and he lives alone, and he refuses to have anybody live with him, and he wants to be independent until he dies. Well, there's a company, and we don't have it. It's not at a price point that we could actually afford it or even bring it to market. But there's a company that makes something called Smart Carpet, which on the face of it sounds ridiculous. Why would you want to have sensors in carpet? But there are two beautiful use cases. One of which is home security, because if it knows how you walk, it knows when somebody who's not supposed to be in your house is walking in your house. The other thing is, when you have an elderly relative who's living alone who's just had a hip replacement, it knows when they've fallen, and they can keep, and they can keep their dignity. They don't have to wear the thing around their neck, which makes them feel old and infirm. But the carpet can send a signal to EMTs and tell them that somebody's fallen or that they're walking in a way that could signal that there's some kind of health emergency. So there are tremendous applications of the Internet of Things, which is really the Internet of devices talking to each other. I suppose we've come out of the Internet of People. And pretty soon, or even as we speak, all these things are happening. How many of you have a fitness device, like a Fitbit or a, yeah, there you go. So here's our first piece. And then for anybody who's diabetic, obviously there are many other applications besides. So with that, I'm just going to turn it over to the panelists. I'd love to just first of all, let's start with Gerri, because I want to get a sense from you as to what you're doing at Adobe, and kind of we'll go down the line and have everybody talk a little bit about where they're coming from a organizational perspective, but also just from a broader technology perspective. Gerri?
So before I start, Susan, I have to ask, that rug, the
Yeah.
carpet thing?
Yeah.
I have a small dog. See, they're figuring out what I'd use that rug for.
There you go.
Yeah, I could use a big old, don't do that! Yeah, that would be good.
That's genius.
Yeah.
See, we just
new
created a new
application.
application.
Yeah,
That's
save
use
your
case
rug.
number 3, people.
So good morning, everyone. Everybody's awake? Woohoo! Okay. Let me give you a little background about myself, and then a little bit of background about what Adobe's doing and why the Internet of Things is such an exciting topic for all of us on this stage right now. First of all, I've been in technology my entire career. So I've been more than 25 years in technology. I have a computer science degree. I started my career many years ago writing assembler code, which most of you in this room have never seen. Yeah, because I watched I Love Lucy while I was writing assembler code. Right. So I've been around a long time, and I've actually been a CIO for about 15 years in 3 different high-tech companies. McAfee Network Associates, VeriSign, and now Adobe for 7 years. So I've seen a lot change. And if I was to look back at these last, probably 2 years, it's probably the most exciting transformation time in technology in that entire 25 years. And it's really because of the incredible innovation in devices, like the Fitbit, like mobile. I mean, honestly, folks, 4 years ago, we wouldn't have thought about doing on a mobile device what we all do now. How many of you have tablets? Yeah, look at every single person. You know, 4 years ago, I'd have said, who has a tablet? You'd go, what? 4 years. So that's pretty exciting. At the same time, data is exploding. We're dealing with now interleaving data together from traditional back office systems, as well as social networks, as well as last millisecond activities of what you're doing, what you're searching, what apps you're running. Think about that. Suddenly, your expectation is that when you go to a website, you expect it to serve you up ads that are tailored to you, right? You all expect that. 5 years ago, you were lucky if it served you up ads. But we really have seen this industry change. So Adobe is in a really exciting place because we have two parts to Adobe's business. The traditional creative business, which many of you probably have heard of Adobe before with Photoshop, probably, yeah. PDF, Acrobat, you all see that like reader download now thing all the time on your machines. So we've been doing that for years. Adobe is more than a 30-year-old software company. But the part of our business you may not be hearing as much about, but is actually very, very big, is analytics. We actually deal with that last millisecond on the web and in applications that deals with stitching together experience data and action data across multiple channels so that when those websites want to serve you that personalized ad, or when you want to make a special offer for someone, or you want your website to look completely different because this person's a customer and you know who they are and you know exactly what they've been doing with your product, that's what we do now. So Adobe is all about analytics, both in web and applications. So that's what we're about.
Great. So analytics tells us what to recommend. And Tao, I'd love you to talk a little bit about how that works in the music world.
Okay, so hello everybody. Can we put up the slides? So I've also been in tech all my career, and I worked at various places, and when I started 15 years ago, we were working on Java stations at Sun Microsystems. That was a vision of Sun's cloud back then. The goal is to have people have these stations, these computers that would only boot off of the network and would not need an operating system or anything by itself. And we have come a long ways. Now things fit in your pocket, and so in the screen you see in 2001 you can fit about 500 songs in your pocket. That was, I would argue, probably the first of things that got into everybody. Before that we have Palm Pre and maybe BlackBerry that business people carry, but really for everybody, that's in the consumer's hands. That was the very first iPod, right? There's a funny wheel, and then all of a sudden you can carry 500 songs rather than only 13 songs on the Discman. And then, how can I go? Okay, all right. So, fast forward. One more. Does this work? So now we have iPhones, we have Samsung, we have tablets. Now things are connected. Now we can have cars connected, refrigerators, and people have hot tubs that play music. And they all come from the internet. So they get connected by the cloud, and things are delivered to you. They're not in the hundreds anymore. The songs that's available to you are in the millions. The music can be surrounding you wherever you go. So it's really, really exciting. So there are two parts of internet, and that's much more available now than 15 years ago. I remember working on these modems called the Metrocom modem that's supposed to give you a little bit of connectivity. And when you go to the wide area, you have to wait for a very long time. Now we're covered wherever you go, even in national parks. So a little bit about big data and Pandora. So now the challenge is, how do we use this? So actually at Pandora, we have just some numbers here. We have more than 250 million registered users, 74 million monthly active users. We're actually available on more than 1,000 different devices. So hot tub and probably some oven and a lot of other Android stuff. And more than 135 vehicles that has connectivity and has Pandora on it. And we serve more than 1 million songs, more than 500 genres. And here is the thing that's really big. We have captured more than 40 billion thumbs from people. So people are doing a lot of feedbacks. I do these talks every so often, so I have to update the numbers. And it's staggering, like she said, that in the past 2 years, these numbers are going up so fast. And 6 billion stations that's been created. So many more people are using it. And our challenge really is how to deal with this big data and how to mine information to serve people better. So Pandora, one of the aspects was we use this music genome project. For every song that we're playing, there are a lot of music analysts. These people actually listen to every song, and then they mark on 400 different attributes what they think of the song. So for example, what is the danceability of a particular song? So like for Katy Perry songs, they're very danceable, so they get a 5. For like for something like Beethoven, maybe not so danceable, it's maybe more for studying and more calming. And voice pitch, somebody higher voice, Adele, lower pitch. And happiness, the music is something that really affects people's mood, right? Happiness is something people rate. And is this song kind of major tone, like uplifting, like Roar and Brave? Or is it really sad about breaking up? And so really, music really kind of creates and follows your life and kind of accompanies you through various of moods. Yes?
So does this mean if I listen to a lot of sad songs that I'm going to get served an ad for like Tinder or something? Because maybe somebody's breaking up with me.
And you'll click buy.
Yes, I will. I totally will.
That would be really good if our ad targeting gets to be that good.
We can help you.
Timbre, and we have like 30 guitar-related genes. There's bow wow effects and everything. Then we use all this data collected to try to analyze and find songs that's similar to your taste. So one of the ways we do recommendations is genome-based. We actually represent these attributes in vectors and calculate the distance between any 2 vectors. So if you want to calculate the distance between any 2 songs, and you got 1 million, that's like 1 trillion comparisons, right? So very big computation scales. And then there's crowd-based, like I said, there's more than 40 billion feedbacks. That's just on thumb up and thumb down. And there's all kinds of other feedbacks, like people actually change station when you're in the middle of the song and they skipped and so on and so forth. So we use all of those signals to find the songs like people kind of like you who also like the song and then try to give the closest song to you and personalize your taste and then get your stations better over time. So that's a kind of a current application that I'm working on that uses data to make people's life better.
So that's such a great example. I mean, I could see that technology applied to everything, which leads me to a question for Karen, which is, one of the best definitions of strategy I've ever heard is strategy is being very clear about what you will do and what you won't do. Mm-hmm. And with a company the size of Cisco and all the things that you could do, can you talk a little bit about how you are focusing and sort of how you're figuring out what's important and what's not important to do right now?
So I think Cisco's had this vision about the Internet of Everything for the last 6-7 years, and I look at IBM here at the front, and I think IBM was another great example of a company who saw the vision of what the Internet of Things or the Internet of Everything could actually provide. And of course, we're a networking company, so that is very core to our strategy and what we're doing. But it's more about what the network could actually deliver. And it wasn't about the speeds and the feeds. It was around how it would actually change people's lives. So, for example, literally more than 6 years ago, we saw a vision where in India, we want to be able to provide with the implementation of the internet, an education for every Indian child for $1 a day. And if you look about Khan Academy, how many of you know about Khan Academy? Lots of people, right? So delivering a world-class education for anyone, anywhere. And so that vision has started to come alive, that it's not just about the technology, but it's about what you can actually do to change people's lives. So that's actually been a cornerstone of our strategy in terms of not just the technology, but actually what it can actually do.
And Chris, can you take that same question from an AT&T perspective?
Certainly. On a typical business day like today, we will handle more than 56 petabytes of data. So real-time analytics is not a luxury or convenience. It's what's required for us to manage that network and optimize that network. So we have data scientists in my organization that look at some 100 different elements in terms of the information that we're gathering from the network so that we can continuously optimize how we provide that quality of service for the customer and utilize that in terms of optimizing the way we route those services, optimizing the quality of service for the individual subscriber. And I just get so excited when I listen to all these applications here, because next year it won't be 56 petabytes, it'll be, it'll probably be 100% more. So just very exciting to see how the Internet of Things is really changing the way people work, play, and do what they do on a daily basis.
Yeah.
So one of the things I find really fascinating about this is that, if we think about consumers, consumers sort of pick up and drive the things that are important to them. So we're seeing a lot of uptake in healthcare. We're seeing a lot of uptake obviously in music. Arguably one of the first applications really of Internet of Things. And I guess the question is, so how do you, each of you, and I'd love you to sort of take this in succession, how do you figure out use cases and sort of what's your process? Because one of the things I've heard, when I speak with clients of ours who are typically Global 2000 companies is, it sounds fantastic. I don't understand what the market opportunity is. Can you please help me figure out a use case? Some companies send in design thinking teams to help them sort of problem solve and find something that's compelling. Can you talk a little bit about how you do that at Adobe? And
I'd love to, yeah. Let me give a real example in our business that has been evolving over the last couple of years. And you'll relate to this from a marketing perspective. For years in most companies, marketing has had this brochure website. We kind of laugh, but to be honest, the website of today in many companies is not that far away from a brochure website. It just looks better. And look a little more interactive, and it has buttons. But in terms of really being content aware, understanding who's visiting, understanding what their interests are, taking context-based cues, most websites really aren't doing that today. So a few years ago, the head of marketing at Adobe and myself, we had realized that we were in a situation where we had a fabulous world-class website. However, it was still largely a website that looked the same to everyone who came. Whether you were small business, whether you were an enterprise, whether you were a single freelance photographer who just wanted to sell your stuff, we looked the same to you, and we thought you were kind of the same to us. And the reason for that was because even though we had lots of data, not petabytes of data, but a whole lot of data, we hadn't taken the data and looked at it holistically and tried to really stitch together a persona with it in a way that we would have a digital self that would represent the person we were talking to on the other side of the glass. So we started down a journey, marketing and IT, side by side, to look at the big data problem and how we could start turning that into a relationship with the customer. So we've transformed today all of our digital platforms at Adobe that interact with customers to being a highly data-driven environment that deals with that last millisecond to determine who you are and what you need from us. And honestly, when I say you'll see something different than somebody else that comes to our website, I mean it. There is no one website. In fact, there is no one homepage. It totally depends how you got there, how you've interacted with us before. And what's more exciting is it might have nothing to do with what you've done on a website. It might have to do with what you did with that photo the last time you were in the Photoshop product. It might have to do with the last 30 things you did on your applications on a mobile device. We're really taking the Internet of Things and making it a customer relationship activity. I used that example earlier of a car. I have nothing to do with cars, by the way. But in a car, I can totally envision in not too distant a future you driving down the road and getting that Starbucks ad for that grande latte that I have every morning, right? If I just stop at this Starbucks, well, think about what you're doing there. You're personalizing the experience using data from multiple sources. It's not a simple problem. It's not about the GPS and the transmit the bits. It's about, I have to know I buy Starbucks. I have to know what I buy from the point of sale system at Starbucks. I need to know that I've already got my Visa card that I've used every day with them, so I don't even have to pay. I can just drive up and pick up my coffee. If I push buy now, it can be at the takeout window. I mean, think about how many IT departments and data sources you're interleaving. I'm thrilled with that. So when I look at the Internet of Things in that first video, what I'm seeing is data flying all over, but somewhere you guys are the folks who are going to build the smart, intelligent systems that will bring that together. Now, I mentioned marketing. I'm going to come back to that for a second because we're a business. We're a business, so are other businesses. The reason we do all these things is to help get close to our customers, so ultimately our business and our customers' business can be more successful. SAP recently recognized the value of some of this work Adobe's doing. They've identified a 300% uplift on conversions just using the personalization I just talked about. Skull Candy. How many of you have a Skull Candy accessory right now? I bet more of you than that. Probably more of you than know you have a Skull Candy device. They ended up doing personalization. Their ROI, 400% ROI. Personalization is not kind of a new funny thing, but if you have your marketing team who has the business know-how to say, hey, I want to personalize these messages, and you've got a strong tech team who knows how to interleave big data from multiple sources in the last millisecond, that's the hard part, that can be really powerful. So think of it as a business problem. Think of it as a big data problem. Think about how it's going to make a difference to your business. In my case, it was marketing. And those kind of uplifts, 300, 400%, you don't get a lot of those opportunities in a career. Yeah.
And as you're talking, oops, I think I lost, oh, there we go. As you're talking, it makes me wonder how you align the organization to be able to deliver this. Because, when we look at the way that many organizations are built, I know it's probably a huge secret, but there's a lot of siloing going on,
yes.
right? There's a lot of siloing. There's the web analytics team, there's the BI team, there's the team that looks at CRM analytics, there's a team that looks at social analytics, there's a team that looks at email marketing and everything else. And so maybe, Chris, if you wouldn't mind addressing that, from the perspective of a more global view of analytics, whatever the specific data streams might be. How do you, are you transforming in that direction? Is that something that you feel is a core strength already? What advice do you have?
So as we are a very large company, so yes, we have lots of silos, but we've used our data scientists to focus on how do I take that information off the network and solve this specific issue in terms of performance. And if you can solve that in the broadband for a wireline piece of the business, well, that's easily pivoted over to the wireless piece of the business. Yes, there's some other pieces that you can bring into that, but the basic framework in terms of those analytics and how you anticipate and develop that could pivot. And then once you've done that for your own internal networks, and you think about the enterprise, how could we take those same kind of analytics and work with our enterprise customers who are using our networks, both our wireline and our wireless networks together, and help them solve their business issues in terms of how they optimize their experience and their cloud services, et cetera. So putting those data scientists together on a horizontal basis so that as they learn or develop the solutions inside this one technology, being able to quickly adapt that to the next technology from a adjacency standpoint and continuing to evolve that, starting from the internal focus in terms of how do we optimize the network better and moving it towards the external.
And Karen, how do you approach that at Cisco?
Well, can I actually come back to your question about the use cases? Because we actually, Cisco teamed up with some pretty smart cookies at MIT. And I think IBM and GE had done some similar work. And so the Internet of Everything, and the reason we call it the Internet of Everything, not just the Internet of Things, is, Gerri, your point, it's about people, right? So the Internet of Things is around really smart objects and data. Right, it's sensors, it's machines, it's servers, and they actually talk to each other without a lot of human intervention. And we actually felt that was really missing the point. It's about people and how they get stuff done. And so that's why we broadened the scope to include people and processes. But you think about how it can change how you live, work, learn, and play. But you thought, well, that's pretty cool, right? Sort of, you have smart cars or whatever. But all right, so what's the business value? So with MIT, we actually did these use cases, and we actually went out and so check out internetofeverything.com. We actually documented these use cases where it was, okay, so what's the business value here? What's the so what? And what we actually found is there's $19 trillion of opportunity, of value. And that's both top line and bottom line. So it's value that's created or migrated between companies and industries over the next decade. That's a big honking number. Right? So you think about, so we believe this is the next wave of the internet, right? The fourth generation of the internet. And you think about where we started, where you would sit in a room, and if you were, you would actually go to the internet. It was a destination, you had to physically sit there. And you think about sort of e-commerce and social and mobile. We believe the Internet of Everything is the next big thing, and that is actually going to change everything. But back to the business value. So we actually have just done a great deal of work with the city of Barcelona, one of my favorite places in the world. And so just give you a simple example, and it's just to really illustrate that this is happening now. So think about streetlights. It's a pretty boring thing, right? But these streetlights, first of all, they were smart. So not only could they control the lighting, so if it was really bad weather, which sometimes in Europe it can be that way, the lights would shine brightly. If there was a lot of traffic and the ambient light was really strong, they would actually dim. So they actually saved some like $37 million just in lighting. But these street lights were smarter. Not only did they control the lighting, but they knew about pollution. They knew about people movement. So they knew how many people were in the street at one point in time. And so actually with the city of Barcelona, not only did they save them money on the lighting, but they actually created some like 50,000 new jobs, and they're in the black in terms of they went from a deficit to being back in the black in terms of as a city. And I think that would be really nice, especially here in California. But it does really change. And each of these use cases, it's real. I think that's the point I'm trying to make. It's real. There's business value that you can translate right now in today's value.
Sure. And it's the word I think probably on people's minds right about now is responsibility and even privacy. When you think about, for example, the fact that the streetlight knows how many people are in the street,
Yes.
The streetlight knows that there's a demonstration beginning to occur. And if you're looking at things like velocity, for example, of people joining in a particular area, then that could be transmitted to intelligence services, et cetera, et cetera. Now, one of the challenges of talking about privacy is that it's such a charged term. But of course, every large organization, most organizations of any size, and certainly those who have strong histories, understand that this is something that they need to be thinking about. And so I'm curious to know sort of what your approach is just generally, because I think this is an area where there's a lot of education on both sides, from the consumer side in terms of responsibility, and I'll just give an example of Facebook because I think Facebook is always the whipping boy for this conversation. With Facebook, you have two choices really, or Facebook had two choices. One was that it would make your privacy decisions for you, i.e. simplify things to the point where you could say, lots of privacy, not much privacy, or lots of disclosure, not much disclosure. In which case, certain things could happen that would upset you that fell under the law of unintended consequences, right? Or it can give you what they essentially have given us now, which is a set of privacy controls so complex that it gives you a migraine before you even start trying to figure out what you should be clicking on. So this is, to me, a perfect example of how these kinds of conversations evolve. And so I'm just curious, maybe you could all kind of quickly go down the line in terms of what your kind of organization's point of view is about how you would approach the topic.
I'll start. I think transparency and customer control are obviously very critical. So having a very transparent policy in terms of what that privacy expectation the customer should have and does have, and then giving them controls.
So likewise, so every employee in Cisco, in terms of part of their business conduct training, they actually have to go through what information they will share, not only about themselves personally, but also the company information as well. So it's something that we take very, very seriously. We actually, again, back to Barcelona. I really like Barcelona. We actually had...
It's a beautiful place to go.
It is a beautiful place. We actually had an Internet of Things forum, our first one last year, and actually launched a competition. And so for the Internet of Things for security in particular, we actually have a prize of around $300,000. So any wonderful lady out there who wants to join this competition, go at it real quick. But it was all around how do you actually, in this world of the Internet of Everything, how do you actually maintain security and privacy? And so we wanted to put the most creative brains out there to actually solve this problem. It's a very, very difficult one and one that we all care about.
I totally agree. The transparency is really important. Pandora is largely an ad-supported service. So we tell our listeners first that, yes, we're ad-supported, so we are going to collect 3 pieces of information: your birth year, not date, just year. And so age, our ad can be age-targeted, and zip code, location, gender. So telling people, and then you can, opt in or opt out of other services, other email and other preferences, and giving them a choice, telling them, okay, if you don't want these ads to be targeted to you, you have the option to pay. So giving them the choice and telling people in very simple forms is very important.
Well, you guys also use the freemium model.
Yes,
So
that's the freemium. So
some people have thought about security and privacy as something that you can tie to freemium versus non-freemium.
Yeah.
You get
The value
more
back.
control of your information if you
get
pay
more
a little.
control
Right.
of your information.
Yeah.
You don't get any. You won't need to provide any information if you want to be paying.
Hey, yes, yes. Yeah, I think that's been a very interesting business model, though. What an interesting idea, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
It says
Yeah.
you want to be more anonymous. That's okay, but you have to contribute a little for that.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Because business does have lots of costs. Like Pandora
Absolutely.
pays a lot
You
of
pay
money.
her down there for the network.
That's right.
Well, there's a network cost, and then there's
We have a whole ecosystem right here.
right.
You guys are 2 of my largest vendors right there. And I use you at home.
very,
so.
very huge. A lot of money goes to network costs, but a much bigger amount goes to music labels and artists. For I think 60% of our revenue goes to pay the artists and the labels. The content, yes.
Do you think that changes, though, with the demographic? And maybe I'm just projecting with a mother of 3 kids, is that they will give up. They're actually quite okay with giving up information as long as the value, whether it's music or whatever it is actually worthwhile giving that information up. And no matter how much I wave my finger and say, don't do that, or take that photo down from Facebook, they're like,
I wonder, do you think it's the demographic of age, or do you think it's that they haven't been bitten yet, or they don't have enough to lose yet, or
They don't have enough to
maybe
lose.
I don't know. I wondered that
okay,
too.
I'm thinking, okay, you're going to apply for college. There's a lot that you
I
actually
know.
lose if you have stuff
Well,
out
it's
there.
good to note that social networking links are now part of most HR departments' review
Right.
process
Yes,
for
absolutely.
people applying for
Right.
jobs. So if you thought that thing you did in college was going to never be shown again,
Yeah. No.
probably not. Probably out there.
And this is the advantage to being older.
Yes.
Our pasts are locked away, except to everyone. So I just want to end with one last question for everybody, since we're here for you, and that is, and take it in whatever order you would like. Maybe we'll start again with Chris. Is, for the folks in the room, we know that you're a range of different areas within technology, a range of different places in your careers. But when we think about the opportunities afforded by the Internet of Everything and big data and all of these things that are so compelling to us now, what advice do you have to individuals as they think about what opportunities they might have in this kind of brave new world that we're walking into?
I just can't, being in the STEM area, I just can't imagine a more exciting field than what we have in front of us right now. When you look at the transformation that's happened over the last couple years in terms of how everything is so connected and the opportunities that avails itself to. So I'm proud of you for stepping out and participating in an event like this, and for what you do in terms of how do you leverage that and take it the next step forward. I happen to watch the Lucille Ball show, so it shows you how old I am. But when I look at how that transformation has happened and how it's accelerating and the opportunity you have ahead of yourselves, it's just amazing. So lean in.
Absolutely. So I have a degree in chemistry, and I ended up in marketing. Okay, figure that out. But actually what I would say, just to put a plug in for marketing as a function, marketing is no longer the fluffy pink function of the past, so please don't think of it that way. Marketing is about being accountable to the business and actually generating revenue. So my team took on a $2 billion pipeline goal. That is to create real revenue for my company. And we actually did that in 7 months. So it's all about really taking the art, but also the science. And actually we're actually hiring data scientists as well, right, for analytics. Business buyers are behaving much more like consumers. 43% of business buyers have already decided who they're going to buy from and what they're going to buy before they talk to any vendor. That means that they're doing their journey online. They are in control of their purchase journey. What that means is marketing is going to play a much stronger role in that purchase process, like I like to tell my head of sales. So Gartner actually did some recent research that showed that companies are reducing their sales costs by 22% and are investing in marketing instead. So it's the art and the science of marketing. So please think of it differently, perhaps, than you have in the past.
So I'm a scientist, a computer science data scientist. What I really would love to see is to have more women in the field of computer science and be the geeks. And I also have to say that really data is exploding, and our challenge is how to deal with all of this and how to quickly get insight, either for us, it's like how to make playlists. And also we have scientists work for marketing purposes, and we call that growth and retention, understanding our audience and understanding listeners, what is good for them. We have these like A/B testings, and people are kind of like always being tested on. Are you getting, we test a little bit different playlist algorithm for all sorts of people, and to see if we're keeping our customers and our listeners better, and are we growing our business better. And we also have scientists working in ads. So it's a really exploding field, and it's really accelerating. And so I think it's a wonderful career to be in. You're working on things that you can connect to. Now, more than any place in my career, you get to work on things that you really is part of your life. Like, you know, people talk to me about Pandora at parties, and you know, they complain or they tell me that they found new music, and they tell me like what new features we should be adding, all sorts of things. So, you know, it's a very exciting time, and to work on things that you're passionate about and you can connect to.
Great. I have two comments. One is completely agree about the marketing comment. And my comments earlier about IT partnering with marketing, very much data scientists, we now have a very different org structure and roles and responsibilities than a few years ago. There are data scientists in marketing. There are also data scientists in IT, and you know, lots of new roles and responsibilities. It's great stuff. But I think the partnership of science and marketing is a big path forward.
Absolutely.
But my other point I want to give as a takeaway, I'm guessing there's a fair number of software or hardware engineers in this room. Would that be a fair assumption? Software or hardware engineers. Okay, so here's my suggestion for all of you. As you're building that next piece of code or hardware, you need to be thinking about, how am I wiring this with data? What am I generating as data? How am I interconnecting this data and this smart device or application or piece of software? The reason I'm making a point of that is I'm working in a company with, you know, 8,000 engineers, and they've written some of the most amazing digital software in the world for doing films and photos, by far, hands down. However, many of them are still thinking as software engineering as, I'm going to write a cool solution application product, and I'm going to have a log file for all the errors. If that's how you're still thinking about data, you kind of missed it. So big deal. It's very different to write an application or solution to think about data as an enabler for interconnection. Really different frame of mind. It's very different to think about building a router if you're thinking about interconnecting to things beyond the upstream log file.
Right.
So if you're in a field where you have the chance to really think about data as an enabler, in or out, think differently. That's my advice to you.
And I feel like I would be remiss if I didn't chime in here, because I'm the only one on the stage who has a humanities degree. And my people. So, you know, when I was in college, in high school and college, like I was in poetry club, okay? Let's just be honest. I'm serious. I came to technology because I found that I had a skill in translating complex things into simpler things and communicating with the business. And I'm terrible at math. I struggled. I took statistics because it was the only kind of math that I could really understand. I'm sort of a math dyslexic. I could get statistics because it had a real world context. Couldn't remember formulas to save my life. Today I work with statistics and math all the time. If you had asked me this 10 years ago or 5 years ago, what would I be doing? I would have laughed you out of the room. So I would say, and this was a mid-career decision for me. I went from being a marketer to being an analyst and working with data and helping people essentially solve the problems that I had when I was a marketer. So I would say wherever you are in your career, just be brave about stepping into, whether it's stepping in or leaning in or pushing in or just inviting yourself in. pushing in. You know, and I'm raising a young son and everything else. So like, you know, I would say just be brave, because this is a time that rewards courage. And I would love to be able to go to data conferences in the future where there is a line for the women's room. And thank you. Yeah. And with that, I would love to open it up to Q&A. We've got about 13, 14 minutes.
Hello. Hi, I'm Debbie Cleansing. I actually work for Liberty Mutual. So data in an insurance company is huge for competitive advantage, right? One of the things that I think I've heard a theme of up there, which I love, is the data scientist role within your organizations and how you're using that to an advantage. One of the things I don't see that is across a lot of the businesses today, I think it's newer, How are you using your data scientists in your new development efforts, and how tied in are they, and what role do they play in the projects?
Anyone who wants to take that?
Historically, they were embedded inside one of the specific silos. And so we've been elevating that and pulling it out, and so that it can be a corporate asset across the entire business. And that also helps accelerate that pivot. As you take expertise in one area and move it into the next area, it's accelerating the way that we can get that done. So we've pulled it out into a separate organization so that it's an enterprise asset.
So we've done almost the opposite. We started off having it all together, and as we've matured and built a good foundation, we actually have data scientists in 3 different areas right now. We have data scientists at the core in the IT organization, which provide really the big data, biggest data of the data. I don't know how to say that, but then we have, in cases like marketing, areas where we have very specific needs around data and certain business objectives that are very clear. Again, they build off of, though, the big data. Like, they have a view of that data, and they have data scientists, but it's on top of that foundation. And then in our product teams, who actually build Adobe product, we now have data scientist team that deal specifically with product usage and telemetry. So in that case, it's more about what's happening inside the products and how are we going to deal with that. And then in some of our products that really are analytics products in general, of course, most of the engineering team are data scientists in themselves because they're dealing with the art of data science. Does that help? So all over the place.
I was trying to find a theme to see if there was a theme here, but it sounds like that each company may be incorporating that.
It's growing.
It's
And
growing.
I do think it's contextual. Our business, a bit of our business is built on selling analytics and analytics engines. So we're going to have a certain framework. Now, yours may be proprietary and it'd be a different type of thing you're doing with your analytics. So it's very contextual based on what your business is about.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Pandora is a smaller company compared to the tech giants. So our data scientists, we have one science team, and people work on different areas, but scientists are part of building the product. So we're from the beginning analyzing data to kind of see if there's any offline trends and who are the winners. Then scientists are doing A/B testing, like I said before, to kind of figure out which are the winning solutions. And people are, product and scientists really work together very intimately, both on ads and playlist making and growth and retention in all efforts. And so we have a very collaborative and kind of like a mutual beneficial product building process.
So I just actually building on that, I would say that in marketing, there's probably 2 areas where it's concentrated. First of all is the strategic marketing function, which is what you probably would expect, right? What's happening in the market, the size, et cetera, and making really data-driven decisions about where we should focus and where our strategy should live. But the other area is around our digital and social team. So it's a really interesting combination because you have the data scientists that understand, where is the consumer, where is the customer spending their time, what are they interested in, sort of what is the traffic pattern, et cetera, and what's their propensity to buy as a result of that. But also we're actually adding in a little bit of, so you'll be pleased to hear this, is a little bit more of the behavioral science, right? So if they do X and Y, what are they likely to do as Z, right? What is their behavior deriving? So I would say that data science is almost like a fundamental, but then on top of that, there is either the human side of things in terms of what is the behavior going to be next, because it's no longer about B2B or B2C in terms of marketing, it's around human to human interaction. So the science gives you that fundamental, but there's like a whole level of either creativity or the behavioral piece on top of that to try and make sense of the data and to actually make it actionable.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah, I had a question. Thank you so much for a great conversation. Really enjoyed hearing from each one of you. I am personally fascinated to be in an era where we have so many different types of user profiles, so to speak. We have millennials, we have Gen X, we have Gen Y, and they all, consume data in their own way, right? My question is that as business owners, as you look at big data and you define your strategies, do you keep the different user profiles in the forefront, and how do you go about it?
So maybe I'll take that one first and then.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's a whole lot of what we do as a business, is this idea of segmentation and personalization based on your behavior, your traits, your characteristics, the kind of groups you connect with. Yes, so I mean, that's sort of the core of the data personalization, to connect with you one-on-one, is to understand those traits. It's not like you buy a database of that, though. Let me be clear. You have to build that up from your contextual interrelationships, the behavioral relationships that you're having. So yes, I mean, I think that's the secret sauce of the next 3 or 4 years of big data and personalization and connecting with your customers in a way that's much more personalized.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, that's what's exciting about digital and social, is that actually it's going to make it possible to market to the masses on a personal level, right? If you think about your XRM system, so you know about that customer as a customer name and a title, what they've bought, who they bought it from, etc. People still give a lot of information about themselves in the social sphere in terms of depending on their privacy rules, but they will still let you know more about them as an individual. So if you can combine that information, you actually are able to market to that person, not as a job title or as a company name, but actually as a human being. And that's where the power really comes in. And what I tell my team is I actually want to get marketing to a point where a customer would actually pay for it, because it's actually adding so much value to them. In terms of either making smarter decisions, faster decisions, less risky decisions. And so you're adding so much more value that they'll actually pay for marketing as a service. So that's the high bar that I'm raising for my team, just in terms of that level of personalization and engagement that you can get.
I can give one more example of that while the next question's teeing up. We have a site called Behance, and Behance is a creative artist sharing site where if you're a creative artist and you drew an amazing picture or created an amazing photo shoot, you can actually share it with other people that would have similar interests. But the stitching of who those people are is not static. It's completely based on all these interactions in real time, all day long, all across the Internet of Things. So that's a very simple example of it isn't quite as simple as you're this age, therefore we're going to present you this. Yeah.
Yeah, so Pandora personalization is at the core of our recommendation and the service. It's playing the music that you love. And it's not necessarily, the challenge here is not necessarily profile based on your age and gender. It's on your music taste. It's what you like, right? So, you might like Beatles even if you're a 17-year-old, right? So, or you can be much older and still like Katy Perry. So, and music tastes change. Tastes change over your lifetime. Maybe, when I had a baby, all of a sudden I need to listen to all these, the baby
Lullabies.
music. Lullabies.
Lullabies.
Yes. And so it's really about characterizing that for your particular business and your service, and understanding personalized to the personal level. We have parameters tuned that's particular to you based on your music taste. So so the challenge, I think, there is really kind of understanding and using data science to help you understand who your customer or who your listener or consumers are. And I mean, we have huge amount of data. So we have like 250 million listeners and 4 billion thumbs. And how do you construct the matrix this big and then try to find useful features and extract the features out of that?
I think we have time for one more question. Yes, in the back.
Yeah. I was just wondering, how would you use big data or leverage big data in an organization where you're not necessarily marketing a product, your main focus is around public awareness and public relations. We talk about personalization, and how do you use all that, harness all that data to be able to leverage your public awareness campaign? I think there's still a disconnect in the non-for-profit organization sector as to how you harness all that data for your own benefit as an organization. So I was just wondering if you had any use cases that could help us.
I actually have one. If you go on Twitter and look up at HM Collab, it's called the Health Media Collaboratory. It's run out of the University of Illinois at Chicago. And it's a group of data scientists who are using social data to try to understand how people talk about quitting smoking. It's part of a larger effort by the CDC to prevent cancer, but it's specific to the ways in which people are using e-cigarettes, the ways in which people are talking about smoking, the ways in which people are reacting to campaigns that the CDC is putting out. And I'm sure you've all seen the recent very, very graphic and very disturbing Stop Smoking campaigns. What they really wanted to understand from that was, there's a general belief in marketing that fear-based campaigns don't work. And the Health Media Collaboratory was able to give the CDC some data as to actually the efficacy, and they were able to look at that and then tie that to calls to the quit line. And they're looking at this from many, many different points of view. The most important thing about this kind of data, though, this social data, is that it requires a huge degree of disambiguation. Because people talk about smoking. I have a slide somewhere, or they have a slide somewhere that shows literally dozens of words for cigarette and e-cigarette. And there's so many different ways to characterize it that it's really, really complex from a big data standpoint. And then you also have to understand when smoking means smoking cigarettes, and when smoking means smoking marijuana, and when smoking means smoking ribs, and also when smoking means smoking hot women. This is part of their work. I would encourage.
On that close?
Yeah.
Isn't that with that?
Let's
Smoking
close
hot
it.
women.
So I would encourage you to go to their website and take a look. It's a fantastic big data use case. Thank you so much to our panelists.
That's a great